This video offers an introduction to devolution in the United Kingdom. Now, the key date for devolution is 1997, one of the key platforms of the Labour Party prior to its election. In that year was this quite revolutionary constitutional change, because the United Kingdom had been a unitary state for centuries, and devolution was the plan to transfer some powers away from central government and towards regional assemblies. Now, there's two things to say about that. First of all, you can see there on the left of the slide, Northern Ireland had its own parliamentary structure for 50 years or so. In 1921 to 1972, Northern Ireland had its own elected parliament. That was abolished in 1973 as the conflict, better known as the Troubles, began to intensify. Now, the other thing to say about devolution is it is not the same as federalism. The 10th Amendment of the US Constitution says that any powers not granted to the central government by that document are reserved by the states. So in a federal state, power and authority ultimately lies at state level and is granted to central government by the state. Devolution, because devolution can be reversed and because powers can be taken away, and authority always ultimately stays at central government, it's not right to say that devolution is federalism. Now, there were referendums in 1997 to 1998 in Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales on the topic of devolution measures in each of those regions, and to date there is no arrangement for an English assembly. So all of those referendums were successful, leading to Holyrood becoming the home of the Scottish Parliament in Edinburgh, Stormont reopening with power sharing arrangements just outside of Belfast in Northern Ireland, and the Senedd in Cardiff, Wales, for a Welsh assembly. There will be a future video where we look at the authority and the powers of each of those assemblies individually at another time. But for now, let me say that there are differences for each region and each assembly. One thing that all three of them share in common is that there are reserved powers, and these are areas of policy that the central government continues to enjoy. So issues of trade, defence and foreign policy, as an example, are reserved powers, which is why in the EU referendum of 2016, when the regions of Scotland and Northern Ireland voted in the majority to remain, that is why those regions also left the European Union, because that vote was held across the United Kingdom, and it was the entirety of the United Kingdom that would either remain in the European Union or, in fact, leave it. And although there is no national assembly in England, or in a regional assembly, I should say, in England, we have seen devolution at local level, and there'll be more on that later in this video. Now, the politician that is most regularly attributed and related to devolution is former Prime Minister Tony Blair, because he was Prime Minister after 1997, and it was the new Labour policy to at least introduce referendums on the topic of devolution. Now, on the right, you'll see an interview from 2019 and another quote from Tony Blair below also. He was asked why he did it. Now, first of all, Tony Blair and the Labour Party said that they wanted the people of the United Kingdom to feel more involved and closer to their politics, particularly in the regions of the United Kingdom, whereas there is a separate national identity, be it Scottish, Welsh or Northern Irish. But one thing that he does concede, he says that when he became leader, and you'll see the second quote on the right-hand side, when he became leader, the topic of devolution was pretty established and settled position of the Labour Party prior to him becoming Labour leader. So what he's saying there is that this wasn't his idea, but this was one that he was willing to champion and to push through. Now, one thing that critics have said about devolution is that all it has done in the long term has led to increased calls for independence. And you can see in the quote underneath that Tony Blair rejects that claim. He says that at no point in his leadership did he feel that the union was under threat, but it's come afterwards. He doesn't really go into much detail as to why. He says that it was bubbling up and we get a Scottish independence referendum. And then he rightly identifies Brexit as giving a new lease of life to calls for independence. Because as said previously, 2 regions of the United Kingdom voted to remain in the European Union, which reignited calls for independence in Scotland in particular, and also bolstered the nationalist cause in Northern Ireland too. Okay, I said previously in the video that we were going to talk about devolution at local level in England, and that's what we're going to do now. So first of all, we're going to talk about the 4 different types of council in England, and they are unitary, metropolitan, county and district councils. Now, there are more district councils than any other. There are 188 of them, so we'll start there. District councils are 2-tier setups, and they tend to be in less populated places, and the example given is New Forest District Council down on the south coast. The second largest group are unitary councils, so we'll go from the bottom of the list to the top. There are 57 unitary councils, and the clue's in the name. With unitary, it is a single tier council. It offers a full range of local services, and these tend to be present in large towns, and the example given there is Derby City Council. After that, there are 36 metropolitan borough councils in the country, and these are single tier also, similar to a unitary council, and they tend to be in urban areas like Barnsley is the example given in the textbook, but Bolton Council is also a metropolitan borough council. And then finally, there are only 25 county councils in the country. These, like district councils, are 2-tier, and they are in less urbanised areas, and Suffolk is the example given. So you'll see that there are some different setups when it comes to local government in England, and different powers will be extended to different areas of England. We're going to talk on the next slide about combined authorities and London boroughs in particular, as well as elected mayors. So, in the country there are 10 combined authorities, and one of those is Greater Manchester. So the Greater Manchester Combined Authority is an area comprising of 10 councils, including Bolton, Bury, Manchester, Oldham, Rochdale and Salford. There is an elected mayor, which is Andy Burnham. We'll talk about that position, that political role, in just a moment. Another example of a greater authority are the 32 boroughs of London. You can see a map of it there, and in the capital there is also a Greater London Authority, and again London has an elected mayor, and at the time of creating this video the London mayor is Sadiq Khan. So let's talk about the position of a city mayor. 2 laws that you need to be aware of in relation to this position. First of all, the Local Government Act in the year 2000 basically established that any local council can hold a referendum to introduce the role of a directly elected mayor. Now this is slightly different to both the metro mayors, which I'm going to talk about in a minute, but also those ceremonial positions. So in Bolton, the mayor of Bolton is elected on a 1-year, is chosen rather than elected, I should say. The mayor of Bolton serves a 1-year term, and many of their roles are ceremonial at local level. Now, in 2016, we get the Cities and Local Government Devolution Act. And that is what gives us this new type of mayor, which is a so-called metro mayor. Now, these positions were elected for the first time from 2017 to lead a combined authority. And so Andy Burnham is an example of a politician who has been elected to that position as a result of that 2016 law. And on the final slide, you're going to see some information, some facts and figures about the areas of the country which have decided to elect that position of a directly elected mayor. So, there are 10 elected mayors in combined authorities, and if you are interested in the parties that represent those areas, 8 of them Labour, 2 Conservatives. Now, there are 16 directly elected mayors in so-called single authorities. So not like the Greater Manchester Authority where councils come together. This is just in a single local council. So of those 16, 2 examples of an elected mayor are Middlesbrough and Salford. Of those 16 individuals across England, 10 are from the Labour Party, there are 2 Conservatives, 2 Liberal Democrats, 1 Independent, and 1 of the Aspire Party in Tower Hamlets, which is made up mostly of former members of the Labour Party. There are 6 proposed elections in 2024, suggesting that there is some appetite across regions of England for this position to extend or to be extended. And there are 3 regions that used to have a directly elected mayor but don't anymore. And those regions are Stoke-on-Trent, Hartlepool and Torbay. Now, Torbay was the most recent area to vote to remove the position of a directly elected mayor back in 2019. And you might be wondering why there's a football mascot on this slide. The leader of the local council in Hartlepool was also the club's football mascot and won elections to the position in 2002, 2005 and 2009. So Hartlepool United's mascot is Hangus the monkey, and that's because of an old legend in the town of Hartlepool. I don't know how true it is, but the legend so goes that a monkey was punished for I think a stowaway on a ship was punished for whatever crime he was supposed to have committed, because it was misbelieved that he was a Frenchman. I don't know how true that is, but it certainly lives in Hartlepool folklore. So, when Hartlepool had voted for the position of having a mayor, a man by the name of Stuart Drummond, who was the town's football mascot, decided he was going to stand as Hangus the monkey. He went to the football club. The football club thought it would be a good idea for some national publicity. It would raise the profile of the team, and so they decided to pay his deposit. And the bookmakers had Hangus the monkey at 100 to 1 when he decided he was going to run, and then very quickly it appeared as though, as a result of maybe protest voting, but also the publicity as well as low turnout, it seemed all of a sudden as if Stuart Drummond had a chance. His odds tumbled down to 4 to 1, and it became a threat to the leading candidate in the race, which was the Labour candidate. Now, he won by about 5,000 votes, Stuart Drummond, and his whole campaign was nonsensical politics. It wasn't a serious campaign. So one of his policies was free bananas for school children. Now, he did follow up on that, and again, that was part of a publicity stunt, but it wasn't serious politics, and it goes to show how people didn't really value the position. They were willing to elect somebody on without a serious campaign to this role because the people of Hartlepool didn't consider it important enough. Now, he was Hartlepool, and there was a leading figure of the Labour Party in the constituency, Peter Mandelson. So Peter Mandelson was a leading figure in Tony Blair's sort of reign as Labour leader, and he was the MP. And it's reported that Peter Mandelson pulled Stuart Drummond to one side at the vote count and called him a disgrace for standing for the position, and Peter Mandelson believed that Stuart Drummond had made a mockery of the position of mayor. Despite sort of not having a serious political campaign, he was re-elected in 2005 and again in 2009, and he only eventually stepped down in 2013 when there was a referendum which decided that Hartlepool would get rid of the position of an elected mayor. And that shows us that maybe in that region that people didn't take it too seriously. And actually in British politics generally, people don't take local politics and local political positions of power too seriously. And there's two reasons for that. First of all, local government has quite limited powers. Quite a lot of authority is held by central government, and central government also controls budgeting. And an example of that is council tax. There is a maximum level with which council tax rates can rise, which limits the amount of change that a council may wish to introduce. And so national budget in England can affect what local government are trying to do. So you can only raise council tax within certain bands and drop it within certain bands too. And because budgeting is tightly controlled by central government, it means that funding for ambitious projects is hard to come by, and there is a lack of change, and that affects the public's perception that local government doesn't really achieve very much. However, that is not the case when you look at the devolved assemblies of Scotland, Wales, of Northern Ireland, which are highly valued for the most part in those regions of the United Kingdom, and there will be future videos explaining the processes in each of those regions.